Imagine yourself in a storm of words. You're locked in a heated argument, heart pounding like a war drum, each phrase a sharpened blade, each retort a shield raised in defense. Your mind races to craft the perfect comeback, determined to prove you're right. Across from you, your opponent mirrors your intensity, eyes flashing, voice rising, neither of you truly listening, only poised to strike. The air crackles with tension, a battlefield of egos. Then, Carl Jung steps into the fray. He doesn't cheer your cause or arm you with arguments. Instead, he leans in, his voice a quiet thunder. You've already lost. Lost? How could that be? You're fighting for your truth, standing your ground, wielding words like a warrior. Yet Jung's words linger, unsettling, like a truth you've always known but never faced. For him, the moment you plunge into this kind of battle, you surrender your power, not to your opponent, but to the chaos within. True strength, Jung argues, isn't found in shouting to be heard or proving others wrong. It flows from a deeper source, a silent wellspring within the psyche. What is this hidden power, and why does silence speak louder than any argument? Let us journey into Jung's philosophy to uncover the silent trick that transforms conflict into authentic, unshakable strength. Why do we argue? The psyche's hidden battle. Most of us believe power lies in victory, winning debates, silencing critics, commanding attention with words. We see arguments as arenas to prove our worth, to assert our truth over others. But Jung, with his piercing insight into the human soul, saw something else. Arguments, he would say, are not about truth at all. They're about the psyche's unspoken struggles, battles fought not against others, but within ourselves. The ego's fragile mask. When someone challenges your beliefs, why does it sting so deeply? Jung would point to the ego, that fragile construct we call self. The ego clings to its identity, its ideas, status, and sense of rightness, like a drowning man to driftwood. An argument feels like an attack because it threatens this identity, stirring a primal need to defend it. Every shouted word, every desperate point betrays the ego's fear of collapse. Power? No. This is vulnerability dressed as strength. The shadow's unseen hand. Beneath the ego lies the shadow, the repository of all we deny, our fears, insecurities, unacknowledged flaws. When you argue to dominate or prove someone wrong, Jung would argue you're projecting this shadow onto your opponent. Their defiance mirrors what you refuse to face in yourself: doubt, weakness, or the terror of being wrong. The louder you argue, the more you reveal your inner division, your unconscious pulling the strings. The herd's seductive call. Why do some fights feel like performances? Because they often are. Jung saw humans as drawn to the collective, seeking approval from the herd. Many argue not to find truth, but to be seen. Smart, confident, victorious. This craving for validation chains you to others' opinions, making you a puppet of external applause rather than a master of your soul. Jung's insight cuts to the bone. Arguments are rarely about reason. They're psychological dramas, staged by an ego desperate to hide its cracks, a shadow yearning to be seen, a soul lost in the crowd's roar. The moment you let provocation pull you into this fray, you've lost. Not because you might be wrong, but because you've let your unconscious rule. True power, Jung insists, begins when you step back, silence the noise, and face the battle within. Jung's vision of power, individuation, and the self. If arguments betray weakness, where does strength lie? For Jung, power is not about controlling others, but about mastering the self. Not the ego's shallow self, but the self, the archetype of wholeness that unites conscious and unconscious. This is the heart of individuation, Jung's lifelong quest, the journey to integrate every facet of your psyche, light and shadow, reason and instinct, into a unique, authentic being. The self as inner sun. The self is no mere ego, puffed up with pride or trembling with doubt. It's the core of your being, a radiant center where opposites reconcile. The individuated person, aligned with the self, stands unshaken by conflict. They don't need to argue for validation because their power flows from within, a quiet authority that others feel without words. Imagine a leader who speaks little but commands respect, not through force but through presence. This is Jung's vision of strength. Silence as sacred space. Silence for Jung is more than restraint, it's alchemy. In the pause of an argument, you turn inward, listening to the psyche's whispers, intuitions, dreams, archetypes like the sage or hero. This inner dialogue dissolves the ego's illusions, revealing the shadow's truths. Silence doesn't just calm the storm, it transforms it, forging a stronger, wiser self. The person who pauses in your imagined debate, calm amidst the chaos, holds power not because they plot victory, but because they're communing with their soul. Transcending the fight. Jung believed conflicts arise from opposites, self versus other, right versus wrong. Arguments trap us in these divisions, but silence offers escape. By holding tension without reacting, you invoke the transcendent function, a psychological leap that integrates opposites into a higher truth. The silent one doesn't win the argument, they transcend it, emerging whole where others remain fractured. Picture that meeting again. Two voices clash, each striving to dominate. One person stays quiet, not cowed but centered, their eyes alive with understanding. Their silence isn't empty, it's a crucible, burning away ego to reveal the self. Jung would say this is power, not outshouting others but outgrowing the need to. Why silence is mightier than words. If arguments chain us to the ego, silence sets us free. For Jung, it's not a tactic to unnerve opponents, but a gateway to transformation. Strategic silence shifts the dynamic, not by manipulating others, but by mastering yourself. Mirroring the shadow. When you stay silent, you hold a mirror to others' psyches. Without your reaction, they face their own words. Anger, insecurity, desperation. Their projections falter, revealing their inner chaos. This isn't about control, it's about truth. Letting others see their shadow while you confront your own. Hearing the unconscious. Silence opens a channel to the unconscious. Jung believed the psyche speaks in symbols, dreams, instincts, archetypes. In the pause of conflict, you hear these voices, guiding you toward wholeness. The ego shouts, the self listens. This inner clarity makes you untouchable, your power rooted deeper than any argument can reach. Tension as creation. Silence creates unease, and for Jung, unease is fertile. It forces you to sit with opposites, anger and calm, doubt and certainty, until they birth something new. This tension, held consciously, sparks the transcendent function, turning conflict into insight. The silent person doesn't just avoid fighting, they create meaning from it. Jung's silence is no passive act. It's a rebellion against the ego's tyranny, a choice to seek truth over triumph. The individuated soul doesn't argue to be right, they pause to become whole, and in that wholeness lies their strength. Legends of silent power. Jung's vision of power shines through history's transformative figures who wielded silence not to dominate but to awaken. Let's explore 3: Socrates, Steve Jobs, and Miyamoto Musashi, through Jung's lens, seeing how their silence forged inner and outer change. Socrates, the sage who questioned souls. Imagine a proud Athenian proclaiming himself the wisest man alive. The crowd nods, but Socrates stays silent. Then softly he asks, "What is wisdom?" The man defines it, confident. Socrates asks again and again, each question a gentle probe. Soon the man stumbles, his certainty unraveling, his contradictions laid bare. Jung would see Socrates as the sage archetype, embodying the self. His silence wasn't a weapon, it was a space for truth. By questioning rather than arguing, Socrates invited others to face their shadow, their unexamined beliefs, and discover their own wisdom. He didn't need to shout. His power lay in awakening souls, proving that people only embrace what they uncover themselves. Jung would call this individuation in action, not winning debates, but guiding others to their deeper selves. Steve Jobs, the visionary who shaped dreams at Apple. Engineers argued for buttons on the iPhone. Steve Jobs envisioned a touchscreen future. He didn't yell or demand. They debated, he listened, asked pointed questions, let their doubts play out. Slowly, they saw his vision as their own, building a device that changed the world. Jung would view Jobs as the visionary archetype, aligned with the self's creative depths. His silence wasn't manipulation, it was intuition, tapping the collective unconscious where innovation dwells. By pausing, Jobs connected with the psyche's symbols, a sleek, buttonless future, and guided others to see it too. His power wasn't in arguing, but in transforming, not proving a point, but birthing a reality. For Jung, this is true strength, speaking from wholeness to awaken possibility in others. Miyamoto Musashi, the warrior who conquered within. Facing Kojiro, a swordsman famed for speed, Musashi arrived hours late to their duel. Kojiro, furious, lost his edge. Musashi struck with calm precision, victorious. Jung would see Musashi as the warrior fused with the self, his silence a triumph over the shadow. By delaying, he didn't just unsettle Kojiro, he mastered his own fear, ego, and haste. His stillness reflected a psyche at peace, its clarity mirrored in Kojiro's rage. Musashi's power came not from his sword, but from his soul, integrated through silence. Jung would argue he won before the fight began, not by outsmarting his foe, but by outgrowing the need to react. This is individuation's strength, a self so whole it shapes the world without force. The thread that binds, power through inner silence. What unites Socrates, Jobs, and Musashi? They didn't waste breath on ego's battles. They used silence to align with the self, transforming conflict into creation. Socrates didn't argue, he awakened. Jobs didn't dominate, he inspired. Musashi didn't rush, he centered. Their power wasn't in out-talking others, but in outgrowing the need to. Jung would say they embodied the self, their silence a mirror of inner wholeness that rippled outward, changing minds, worlds, and fates. Why do we argue? Why do we cling to being right, even when it leads nowhere? Because we're human, driven by egos that fear, shadows that hide, collectives that beckon. But Jung offers a better way. Silence, not as retreat, but as revolution. The psychology of arguments, Jung's truth confirmed. Jung's insights, radical in his time, find echoes in modern science. Why do arguments ensnare us? Projections mirror. Psychological research confirms we project our flaws onto others. What angers us in them often lives in us. Jung's shadow explains why arguments turn personal. We're fighting ourselves, not our opponent. Silence breaks this cycle, letting you face your projections rather than fling them outward. Cognitive chains, studies on biases, confirmation bias, the backfire effect, show we argue to protect beliefs, not seek truth. The more we're challenged, the harder we cling. Jung's self rises above this, using silence to question assumptions, not defend them. Emotional fires. Neuroscience reveals arguments spark the amygdala, flooding us with fear or pride. Silence, backed by mindfulness research, calms this storm, activating the prefrontal cortex for clarity. Jung's pause isn't just psychological, it's biological, rewiring your brain for power. Validation's trap. Social psychology shows we argue for status, not insight. Yet experiments on influence reveal that calm, reflective people, those who pause, command more respect. Jung's self, centered in silence, wields this authority naturally. Jung was no mystic spinning theories. He was a scientist of the soul, mapping the psyche's depths. His truth holds. The real fight is within, and silence is your sword. Silence or speech? The art of conscious conflict. Does Jung's power mean never arguing? Far from it. Conflict for Jung is a crucible, tension that forges the self. Silence is powerful, but wielding it blindly is as weak as arguing recklessly. The trick lies in knowing when to pause and when to speak. When to stay silent. When ego drives you. If you're fighting to be right, your shadow is at the helm. Silence lets you ask, what am I defending? What am I avoiding? This introspection sparks individuation, or when others project. If they're arguing from their shadow, your silence mirrors their chaos, sparing you entanglement. But when the psyche speaks, silence opens the unconscious, dreams, archetypes, truths. Pause to hear them, and you'll act with clarity no argument can match. When to speak. When conflict sharpens you. Jung saw opposites as growth's engine. Engage when arguments reveal your shadow or push you toward truth. When words transform. Speak from the self, not ego, to awaken others, as Socrates did, or create as Jobs did. But when silence alone isn't enough. Some battles, Galileo's, Socrates, demand speech to shift reality. Jung's self speaks when it serves the soul's purpose. Jung's power isn't in avoiding conflict, but in mastering it consciously. Silence builds the self. Speech shares its light. Imagine a world where every word carried this weight, where arguments birthed wisdom, not wounds. The silent trick, a call to transform. Picture yourself back in that argument. Your blood boils, words crowd your throat, the urge to strike overwhelming. Now stop. Breathe. Jung's voice echoes. Who fights here? Your ego or yourself? If you had only 100 words left in life, would you waste them proving a point? Or would you guard them, like a sculptor chiseling a final masterpiece, for truth alone? Here's Jung's silent trick. Power isn't in outshouting others, it's in outgrowing their noise. The next time you're provoked, pause. Feel the emotions, anger, fear, pride. They're your shadow, begging to be seen. Ask, what does this reveal about me? Let silence be your sanctuary, a space to hear the self's voice, calm, clear, whole. Watch your opponent's words falter, their projections exposed by your stillness. Then, if you speak, let it flow from your core, each word a spark of transformation, not a flare of ego. This is no small act. It's rebellion against a world that equates noise with strength. Socrates didn't argue, he awakened souls. Jobs didn't dominate, he shaped futures. Musashi didn't rush, he conquered within. Their silence wasn't weakness, it was alchemy, turning conflict into creation. You hold this power too, not in your voice, but in your choice. So here's the challenge. Next time you're pulled into a fight, don't react. Pause, listen. To your psyche, your shadow, yourself. See what truths emerge, what flaws surface, what possibilities bloom. Stay silent until your words carry your soul's weight, or let silence speak alone, a quiet that shifts worlds. Because true power, as Jung knew, is silent, the stillness that births a stronger you, a brighter reality. Will you keep shouting, chained to ego's battles? Or will you pause, embrace the silence, and claim the power within? The choice is yours. Choose wisely. Choose to be whole.